At the resurrection point in the ruins of Modu City, Theodore clenched his fist tightly and cursed under his breath coldly. Fuck. Seeing him like this, the girl with short blonde hair beside him, Fury, also frowned and asked, "Uncle, what's going on? Can we get back the lifespan we lost?" Theodore shook his head and said coldly, "The official surnamed Zeus said that they can't influence Shadow. We have to resolve the conflict between us and Shadow on our own. They deeply regret this incident, but they can give each of us 10 years of lifespan to make up for our losses as much as possible." The black guy Zuma thought for a moment and said, 10 years for each person? That's 650 days. It seems okay, right? It's better than nothing. Theodore patted him on the head and said, "Kid, you don't understand a thing. Why did they give us 10 years? It's to prevent us from making trouble. Theodore, still have some influence in Modu City if I take the lead in making trouble. I can mobilize 300, as in the Great May players in the Modu area, and more than 200,000 players from the Cherry Blossom country will also listen to our orders. 2. Iron Fist, Amos was shocked and said, "There are so many foreigners in Modu City?" Theodore smiled and said, "Of course. After all, this is the largest international metropolis in Daxia." The girl Fury spat and said, "Then should we take those 10 years of lifespan? The Daxia officials are so despicable." Theodore nodded when he heard this, and there was a hint of conspiracy in his eyes as he said, "Take it. Why not take something that's given for free? Listen to me. It's not good for anyone if we go to extremes. Daxia's overall strength is very strong and it's very difficult to deal with. After all, this is their territory. I promised to give an official surnamed son 10 years of lifespan and got a piece of news. The reason why the Daxia official didn't pay much attention to us is that Shadow has confirmed cooperation with the official. When the official finds a boss, Shadow will help kill it. He only needs to take the lifespan and assassin-related items." As soon as these words came out, everyone was a bit shocked. The blonde girl Fury calculated it and said, "With Shadow's damage of over 100,000 per strike, it only takes 6 or 7 strikes to kill a platinum level boss. With the Daxia official finding bosses for him, this is such a good deal." 1. Theodore smiled and said, "Do you really think it's that easy? The ruins of Modu City span 100 or 200 kilometers. If he cooperates with the official like this, he'll be on the road all day long, which will delay his own development instead." The middle-aged knight uncle in the team, who had a bit of a hot temper, said in a deep voice, "Then what should we do? Just take the 10 years of lifespan and be cowards." Theodore said calmly, "Don't worry. I have my own countermeasures. Both Shadow and the Daxia official must pay the price." The black guy Zuma looked confused and asked, "What's the way?" The diplomat uncle calmly said, "Remember, I mentioned before that an old friend provided the location of a diamond-level boss? That boss is extremely powerful and has special abilities. 1. It's said to have a superior affix called Nightmare. Once you die at its hands, it's not just as simple as dying once. Any skill of that boss can deal damage of 10,000 to 20. Even Shadow can't resist its damage, and it's even more impossible to kill a diamond-level boss in an instant. As long as we trick Shadow and the people from the Daxia official to go there, they will definitely suffer heavy losses." As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes lit up. The middle-aged knight uncle with a hot temper laughed and said, "Nice. Then why don't we act quickly?" Theodore shook his head and said, "Don't rush. If we take them there now and a tragedy happens, we won't be able to leave the city alive. I got the exact news that part of the aviation in Modu City will be restored in 3 days. We'll take the flight of Columbia Airlines and return to Washington in the Great May. 2. As for the location in the game, we can also consume lifespan to forcibly transfer to the ruins of Washington City after arriving in Washington. By then, we'll be completely safe." Now, many countries have already studied and proved that if a player's real-world location changes, then the player can consume lifespan to also transfer to the game area, corresponding to the real-world location in the game. This process is called forced transfer. For example, if Qinfeng's real-world location changes from Shanghai City arrive Modu City, he can consume lifespan to forcibly change his location in the game. From the ruins of Shanghai City arrive the ruins of Modu City. Of course, the lifespan consumed in this way is very large. From the ruins of Shanghai City to the ruins of Modu City, the teleportation cost after reaching level 15 in the game is 985 days of tradable lifespan. But if it's through forced transfer based on the real-world location, the required lifespan is 10 times that. If it's across countries, the consumption will be even more, so Qinfeng has never used this function. However, Theodore has the Great May Empire behind him. As long as Zuma, the only hidden profession, is there, then the Great May Empire official will definitely be willing to spend this lifespan for him to transfer them back. Compared with in-game teleportation, forced transfer has an advantage. That is, there is no level limit. Otherwise, you have to reach level 15 to be able to teleport between the ruins of cities. As for cross-country teleportation, you need to be at least level 30 before reaching the required level. If you want to transfer areas in the game, there's only one way, which is to spend 10 times the lifespan for forced transfer. So when Theodore finished speaking, everyone in the team breathed a sigh of relief. The blonde girl Fury hugged Theodore and kissed him, saying, "You're really something, Uncle. Meeting you is the luck of my life." Iron Fist, Amos then laughed and said, "Then after we get on the plane and leave Daxia's airspace, we'll enter the game and lead them to their deaths." Theodore smiled and nodded. Yes, before that, to avoid being killed by Shadow again. We'll stay put for now. Let's take a rest these days. I'll trade some boss location information with the Daxia official according to my intelligence network. On the one hand, we can earn some lifespan. And on the other hand, we can make them lower their guard until we get on the plane and send them to hell. As a diplomat of the Great May stationed in Modu City, Theodore still had a wide network of contacts in Modu City. Many, the Great May businessmen and entrepreneurs doing business in Modu City mostly knew him. Through those, the Great May businessmen and entrepreneurs, Theodore could also get in touch with hundreds of thousands of the Great May players in Modu City. Soon, he acquired the location information of 2 platinum-level bosses. Theodore directly became a middleman, made a profit from the price difference, and resold the location information of the platinum-level bosses to the Daxia official. And on Qin Feng's side, if he knew about Theodore's revenge plan, he would surely sigh and say, "This guy is surprisingly nice." 1. Because in his previous life, it was that diamond-level boss that caused the real death of nearly 100 top official players in Daxia, and a series of serious consequences. Under normal circumstances, it could indeed make Daxia suffer heavy losses. But now, with Qin Feng's existence, the situation was completely different. A diamond-level boss was not that difficult at all. It was just that Qin Feng had only heard about it in the news in his previous life and didn't know where that diamond-level boss was. Otherwise, he would have gone to fight it by himself long ago. Why would he wait for Theodore to lure him to go there? Qin Feng was just worrying about not being able to find a diamond-level boss. And now you're delivering it to me. Wasn't he a nice guy? At this time, Qin Feng was still consuming evolution points to evolve his skills when he suddenly received a reply from Wang Meng. Big shot. The Modu side has responded and said that this kind of cooperation is okay. There's a platinum level boss right now. If you go there, you can add the on-site person in charge as a friend and contact him in the future. Qin Feng wasn't in a hurry. Without a flying mount, it would be too slow for him to rush there. So he replied, "Don't rush. I'll explore a ruin first. It'll probably take a few hours. I'll contact you after I'm done." After saying that, he looked at the skill panel. After killing the Thousand Blade Centipede, Mo Wei, Qin Feng finally used the Greed Hand to loot an Emerald level strength training skill book. This thing could also increase strength attributes for free. Qin Feng directly learned it and consumed 33 evolution points to evolve it 3 times to reach the legendary level. You have consumed 1 + 2 + 30 evolution points, and 171 points remain. Strength training, Emerald Arrive, Diamond Arrive, Epic Arrive, Legendary. Passively increases strength by 48 Arrive, 72 Arrive, 96 Arrive, 144 points. Required level, 18. New effect at Legendary level, your total strength attribute value is increased by 10%. Previously, Qin Feng had learned Agility training and evolved it to the Legendary level, adding 126 points of Agility. That was because the Agility training skill book was only for level 14. And this strength training skill book was for level 18, so the values were a bit higher. However, the percentage increase for the total attribute value newly added at the legendary level was still 10%. Qin Feng didn't pay much attention to it. He then looked at another skill book. It was a low-quality skill book dropped by a centipede minion, and it was surprisingly backstab enhancement. I can level it up now. Qin Feng directly learned it. Overwrite the skill effect. Backstab enhancement legendary. Required level, 1 Arrive set. When launching an attack from behind the target, the damage is increased by 100%, Arrive 180%. Legendary level special effect. When you are invisible, all your damage is considered as backstab damage. It was simply powerful. The low-quality backstab enhancement skill book obtained by Qin Feng originally increased the backstab damage by 18%, but because Qin Feng's backstab enhancement had already been evolved to the legendary level, this value had directly increased tenfold. From the previous 2 times backstab damage, it has now been increased to 8 times. Qin Feng was even a bit amazed. The key point was that as long as he was invisible, all his damage was considered as backstab damage, combined with the effect that attacks won't break invisibility. Every strike of his was a backstab, and every strike was deadly. Moreover, the reason why Qin Feng asked Wang Meng to wait for a few hours was that he wanted to farm monsters in the Skull Ruins, and clear all the wild monsters in the ruins. The Skull Ruins, like the terrible ghost ship, is a level 20 leveling area. And it's also a berserk area where the lifespan loss speed is 100 times faster. After clearing all the monsters here, I should be able to advance my profession for the 3rd time. The last time he advanced his profession, Qin Feng gained the real permanent invisibility ability. What effect would this 3rd advancement have? Qin Feng was looking forward to it very much. After he collected the lifespan, light spheres, and loot at the entrance of the ruins, he still maintained his invisible state and advanced towards the Skull Ruins ahead. What was presented in front of him was a ruin of buildings, and in the middle of the building, ruins. There was an extremely huge human skull embedded in the ground. Of course, even if it was human-shaped when it was alive, such a huge skull probably couldn't be called a human being. The size of a human skull was basically about 10 to 20 centimeters. But this giant skull in front of him was hundreds of meters wide from front to back. Even just the forehead part exposed on the ground was dozens of meters high. What Qin Feng could see was only the forehead and the top of the skull. No one knew what exactly the skull was, and the ruins inside the skull seemed to have been built by some tribal race in the past. The top layer was the skull. The bottom layer was an irregular giant pile of bones. If the skull still looked somewhat human-like, then the part under the skull had nothing to do with humans at all. Qin Feng walked towards a door opening on the forehead of the skull. This door opening was the entrance to the ruin. There was no level requirement to enter this ruins, but to enter the core area, one needed to reach level 20 in order to have a chance to obtain a flying mount. You have entered the skull ruins. This area is a berserk area. Yeah. The lifespan lost speed in the area 100 times. Qin Feng didn't care about the system prompt and started farming directly. Inside the skull ruin, there were many pale and distorted monsters. These monsters looked human-shaped at first glance, but they all had different lower bodies. Some had centipede-like lower bodies, some were like earthworms, some were like beetles, and some were like spiders. The whole skull ruins seemed like a biochemical modification site. Of course, in Qin Feng's eyes. No matter how strange these monsters looked, they were just experience points. In the invisible state, streaks of Shadow Blade light, streaks of Nightring Blade light, and from time to time, instant Shadow Slash were released, and terrifying and miserable wails came out from the skull ruins. Qin Feng's experience points rose rapidly. All the monster corpses along the way were completely looted by him. In the skull ruins, just the area of the skull cap was divided into more than 10 layers. Qin Feng cleared them layer by layer. Each layer had hundreds of monsters, and all of them were turned into Qin Feng's experience points and evolution points. Occasionally, some low quality and common loot would also drop. 2 hours later, Qin Feng had killed thousands of monsters. And finally, the evolution points had accumulated to 242 points. You have consumed 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 8 plus 13 plus 210 evolution points, and 0 points remain. Smoke Bomb Bronze Arrive Legendary. Release a Smoke Bomb to block the enemy's vision and cause a small amount of dark element damage. You have used Soul Devouring on the skill Smoke Bomb Legendary. Your spirit has changed. Each point of spirit is converted into 3 Arrive, 5 points of elemental attack, and 5 Arrive, 7 points of all element resistance. Elemental attack power. 1373 Arrive in 1895. All element resistance. 1623 Fawn. 8% elemental damage reduction Arrive 2145-68. 2% elemental damage reduction. The Smoke Bomb skill could block the enemy's vision, but with Qin Feng's overpowered invisibility ability, did he still need to use the Smoke Bomb? Just devour it. After swallowing this skill, Qin Feng's elemental attack was further increased, and the elemental damage reduction also increased a lot. The damage of Shadow Blade, Nightring Blade, including the ultimate skill Scarlet Blade, has all increased a lot. At this rate of devouring skills, it won't be long before I can increase both physical damage reduction and elemental resistance to 90%, right? Qin Feng knew very well. Even a level 50 warrior with full defense points added and a tank-type bloodline couldn't reach 90% dual resistance. Either the physical defense was high or the magic defense was high, and it was impossible to take both into account. When facing different bosses, one had to switch different equipment. But in this life, Qin Feng's soul-devouring bloodline combined with the infinite evolution talent would make his attributes more and more overpowered, and there wouldn't be any weaknesses. After devouring the skill, Qin Feng continued to farm monsters. He walked along the white bricks in the ruins, relying on the faint pale light around, and went deeper into the skull ruins layer by layer. He kept killing until he reached the 12th layer at the bottom. What appeared in front of Qin Feng was a pitch-black deep hole. That was the entrance to the area under the head of the mysterious skull creature. The area of the unknown limbs and body. Only players who had reached level 20 could enter the area inside the hole. And it was also the key to obtaining a flying mount. However, Qin Feng didn't enter for the time being. He had spent several hours killing his way down and slaughtered thousands of pale monsters. Now his experience points had been fully accumulated. The third professional advancement. Your shadow profession has advanced. Current, second order arrive third order. Profession attribute bonuses: Strength 27 arrive 54, Constitution 27 arrive 54, Agility 72 arrive 24, Spirit 45 arrive 90. New profession passive 5, Shadow Arc. When you are in the invisible state and are attacked, your invisibility state won't be immediately removed, and you won't immediately take damage. All damage, negative statuses, and the removal of invisibility will take effect 1 second later. Not effective against superior affixes. Note 1. You can release the invisibility skill to offset the removal of invisibility 1 second later. Note 2. You can use Healing of Life absorption of obtaining a shield to offset the damage that is about to be caused 1 second later. Note 3. You can use Dispelling of Purification to offset the negative status that is about to be obtained 1 second later. Qin Feng was a bit confused when he saw the panel. This Shadow Arc seemed a bit invincible. Qin Feng observed the results of this professional advancement. In terms of attributes, although the growth rate wasn't as high as that of the second advancement, the increased values were still higher than those of the second advancement. The most crucial part was the new effect, Shadow Arc. I'm sure that in the previous life, those who obtained the Shadow profession didn't make it through the third advancement. Otherwise, with the Shadow Arc effect, the mortality rate would be greatly reduced both in the game and in reality. Although Qinfeng now had permanent invisibility and launching attacks wouldn't break his invisibility. But without considering damage absorbing shields, if he was attacked, his invisibility would still be removed. The first effect of the Shadow Arc was that after being attacked, the removal of his invisibility would be delayed by 1 second. During this period, as long as he cast an invisibility skill again, he could offset this effect, truly permanent invisibility. It seems that a 1 second reaction time is very short. But in the future, as the level gets higher, the reaction speed and skill casting speed will be faster. Several skills can be cast within just 1 second. It's enough time to react. Besides, what was truly overpowered was the second effect through healing, life absorption, and shields. The damage that was delayed to take effect after 1 second could be offset. For example, Qinfeng's current maximum health points were 19, which meant that he would die if he took 19 in damage. But that was in the past. Now, even if Qinfeng took 100,000 damage, this damage would only take effect 1 second later. During this period, whether Qinfeng obtained healing, a shield, or life absorption, he could offset this 100,000 damage. My instant Shadow Slash can stack a shield with 100% of my health points each time it hit. If all 9 hits land, it would be equivalent to a 1 in 71,000 shield. Even more terrifyingly, the ultimate skill, Scarlet Blade, has a 600% life absorption effect. If I deal 300,000 damage with one Scarlet Blade, I can absorb 800,000 health points. So, as long as Qinfeng had skills in hand, even if he suddenly took 800,000 damage, he could directly rely on the life absorption effect of the Scarlet Blade to offset this damage. Is this toughness already comparable to that of an Emerald level boss? Qinfeng even felt that it was a bit absurd. Of course, since the reaction time given by the Shadow Arc was only 1 second, so in some cases, Qinfeng might not be able to successfully absorb health or obtain a shield. Both of these required the existence of attack targets in front of him to take effect. Originally, I was a bit nervous when facing high-level bosses, and my survival ability wasn't enough. Now, as long as I operate properly, I can even take on epic level bosses, Qinfeng thought to himself. Anyway, he still planned to test this effect. He had cleared his way down the Skull Ruins, but there were still some corners that hadn't been cleared completely, and there were still some monsters left. He simply cancelled his invisibility state and walked inside the Skull Ruins shrouded in the dim and pale light. Soon, he came to a corner of a small alley piled up with pale brick walls. He saw a juvenile monster. It was a humanoid monster with a pale body and a pale tail like a spine. It looked very small, hugging its head and shivering in the corner, perhaps because it was juvenile. This monster didn't look scary at all and didn't have the hideous and terrifying appearance of ordinary monsters. Instead, it looked rather pitiful. Qinfeng saw it, but there was no expression on his face. In the previous life, some female players saw this kind of thing, felt pity for it, and had their Shengmu Sin, a Chinese term meaning overly kind-hearted or overly sympathetic, overflowing. They wanted to let it go, but as soon as they turned around, they were attacked by it and met a tragic end. So, pity was the most luxurious emotion in this era. Not to mention monsters of different races, even among people. Once you let down your guard, it was very easy to be betrayed. Qinfeng, wearing the Black Flame's gift leather armor, approached the juvenile monster step by step. When he crouched down in front of the monster, the juvenile monster suddenly turned around. Its sharp claws and spinal tail instantly stabbed towards Qinfeng's face. If Qinfeng didn't crouch down, this juvenile monster was too short to attack his weak points. But when he crouched down, the monster immediately saw the opportunity. Puff puff! Qinfeng didn't react at all and let the monster's spikes and tail vertebra land on his face. His instinct made him close his eyes for a moment, but the attack of this juvenile monster was really too low for him. Even when hitting the weak points, it only caused 78 and 278 points of damage. At the same time, on Qinfeng's health bar of 19, about a quarter of it turned gray. This gray part of the health bar meant that the damage would be deducted with a 1 second delay. Qinfeng swung his pale bone blade and directly used a short-range instant Shadow Slash. With just one hit, the juvenile monster was already killed. At the same time, the gray part on Qinfeng's health bar completely disappeared and was replaced by a shield bar, with about 75% of his health points. One hit of the instant Shadow Slash can generate a shield with 100% of my health points, which is 19. After offsetting the more than 4,000 damage, there were still 15,000 shield points left. The situation was exactly as Qinfeng had expected. He nodded with satisfaction and directly used the greed hand on the juvenile monster. He got 1 evolution point, and a level 19 mage's initial skill book Fireball also dropped. This thing was useless to Qinfeng. Although there was Bafichi's equivalent exchange agreement, this exchange had a fixed 1-hour cooldown and didn't benefit from cooldown speed bonuses. It was definitely more beneficial to use it on high-level equipment and skill books to maximize the gains. I can go challenge the core of the ruins now. Qinfeng turned around and went back to the pitch black hole just now. At this time, he received a private message. He took a look and saw that it was from the president of the Knights Temple, Chen Wuming, whose codename was Radiant Virtue. Radiant Virtue. Big shot. I heard that you've reached an agreement with the official and can help kill platinum level bosses. Well, if I find platinum level or emerald level bosses, can I cooperate with you? Big shot. Qinfeng was a bit speechless. This guy was really quick to take advantage of any opportunity. It fit his stereotype of this guy from his previous life. Qinfeng thought for a while and replied, "Yes, and the conditions can even be the same as those with the official, but for each boss, you have to prepare some killers for me, and then we can have a long-term cooperation." This okay. Chen Wuming gritted his teeth and agreed. As long as he could cooperate with Shadow and let Shadow help kill bosses, he would make a profit no matter what. As for the sacrificed killer members, just give them more contribution points. In the Knights Temple Guild, contribution points could be used to prioritize obtaining the drops from the guild's boss battles, although being killed by Shadow would cause the loss of non-tradable lifespan. The priority to obtain equipment and skill books was too attractive. Moreover, once they could cooperate with Shadow, then the number of high-quality loots in the future would be increasing, as long as they could find enough bosses for Shadow to kill. Soon, Qinfeng and Chen Wuming agreed. To help kill a platinum level boss, 50 killers had to be prepared. To help kill an emerald level boss, 200 killers had to be prepared. As for diamond level bosses, they would talk about it when they were found. 1. Even Qinfeng didn't expect that the Knight's Temple, which was his nemesis in his previous life, had now become a tool guild for him to eliminate his killing value. Soon, Qinfeng returned to the pitch black hole. He merged into the darkness. After becoming invisible, Qinfeng jumped down into the pitch black hole. You have entered the core of the Skull Ruins. This area is a disaster area. Bam. The lifespan lost speed in the area 1,000 times. 2. The core area of the Skull Ruins? Here, it was a disaster area, a level higher than the Berserk area, with the lifespan depletion speed reaching 1,000 times. That meant that in this place, just staying here for 9 hours would consume 1 year of lifespan. If an ordinary human with 50 years of lifespan was placed here, they would die of lifespan depletion after half a month. Of course, as long as Qinfeng was in the invisible state, his lifespan depletion speed was reduced by 90%. In other words, this disaster area with 1,000 times the speed was equivalent to a Berserk area with only 100 times the speed for Qinfeng. What's more, Qinfeng now had over 6,000 years of non-tradable lifespan, so he didn't pay any attention to this system prompt at all. When Qinfeng jumped down the pitch black hole and arrived at the core area of the Skull Ruins, the final challenge had already begun. All kinds of pale skeletal monsters crawled up and drilled out from the ground around him, charging towards Qinfeng to attack. However, Qinfeng couldn't see these monsters with his naked eyes at all, because this place was pitch black, without a single ray of light. This was the biggest difficulty of this challenge. Here, vision was useless. One had to either rely on hearing to kill monsters or use some special means. To pass this challenge, a level 20 player needs at least 400 points of agility. The higher the player's level is, the higher the level of the monsters will be, the less noise they make when moving, and the higher the agility required to hear the monster's movements. The most crucial point was that after clearing the small monsters first, the corpses of these small monsters would combine to form an emerald level boss, the Spirit of Bones. Only by defeating the Spirit of Bones alone could one obtain the Flying Mount as a reward. In the previous life, in 9 years, the total number of players who obtained this Flying Mount was only 5. The others either couldn't defeat it or, in the later stage, didn't think much of this Flying Mount anymore. But for Qinfeng now, this was still the most reliable place to obtain a Flying Mount. Of course, Qinfeng didn't have the experience of challenging the Spirit of Bones in his previous life either. He just knew a little about it from some strategy posts on the forum. My current agility attribute is 653 points. Considering the effect of the soul-devouring bloodline, the agility effect is increased by 32%, which means I have 862 points of agility. It's already twice the minimum requirement for this challenge. In Qinfeng's ears, the movements of the skeletal monsters around him were really obvious. Shadow Blade, 278, Zaozen weakness attack. Shadow Blade, 252, Zaozen weakness attack. When killing monsters in the dark, even if one could hear the target's movements, the biggest difficulty was hitting the weak points. But for Qinfeng, he could hit the weak points with just a casual throw. There was no way around it. The weakness amplification effect from the mythical level Mercy Kill was just too powerful. Feeling that the number of skeletal monsters around was increasing, he directly used the Night Ring Blade. In the darkness, a blade light that completely blended into the darkness spread and expanded. 271, Zaozen weakness attack, 282. Zaozen weakness attack, 275. Zaozen weakness attack. Those skeletal monsters that surrounded him were killed in groups. However, at the same time, there were also some skeletal archers and skeletal spellcasting creatures that directly launched various area of effect attacks towards the field. Bone Arrow Rain, Bone Decay, Bone Curse. All kinds of monster skills covered the field. The monsters couldn't see Qinfeng either, and when Qinfeng was in the invisible state, he didn't make any sound at all. So, they could only release area of effect attacks, although Qinfeng could clearly hear the sound effects of those area of effect attacks, since he wasn't used to fighting only by hearing. He was still hit by a small number of area of effect attacks after all. The field was in chaos. In the pitch black darkness, monsters were everywhere. All kinds of skill sound effects and attack sound effects were heard continuously. Fortunately, even though Qinfeng was hit by a small number of attacks, he had over 10 layers of black light shield on him, with more than 10 damage absorbing shields, which were completely enough. Now my black light shield has a cooldown of just over 12 seconds. As long as it's released, the cooldown starts counting. It's very hard to deplete them all. With the damage being blocked by the damage absorbing shields, Qinfeng didn't even need to use the function of Shadow Arc. He shuttled freely in the darkness and killed the skeletal monsters one by one in an instant. The corpses of the skeletal monsters around gradually piled up. Finally, about half an hour after Qinfeng came down, Heinfeng's kill count of skeletal monsters reached 1. He heard a huge noise coming from the darkness, and the cold ground under his feet also began to tremble. Here it comes. Although he couldn't see it with his eyes, Qinfeng clearly heard and felt that a huge monster was gathering and appearing not far from him. All the bones in the field were linked together and jointly formed an emerald-level boss over 10 meters tall. In the darkness, Qinfeng couldn't even see the boss's health bar, but at the same time, the other side couldn't see where Qinfeng was either. If it were a normal player coming here, the boss would definitely be aware of their movements because this boss was accustomed to the darkness and was born from it. 2. There was a strategy post in the previous life saying that there was a special profession that once obtained the vision of the Spirit of Bones. In the vision of this emerald level boss, as long as it was a living thing, it would appear as a green light in its eyes. But obviously, facing Qinfeng's 21 level invisibility, the Spirit of Bones was ineffective. Now, let me see who is truly born in the darkness. Heinfeng held the Pale Bone Blade and the Tide Playing Blade. He activated the dual blades towards the direction where the noise was coming from. Shadow of Slaughter. Mercy Kill. Instant Shadow Slash. In the extreme darkness, 3 shadow clones condensed and appeared. Mercy Kill combined with Instant Shadow Slash instantly passed through the invisible boss, and a series of damage numbers of 70 to 80,000 burst out. But soon, Heinfeng saw a lot of immune words popping up in the darkness. One phased down with this wave. If I remember correctly, this boss has a total of 4 phases. Heinfeng released the Black Light Shield, and over 10 layers of damage absorbing shields once again surrounded him. Immediately after that, he suddenly felt a blade light swinging horizontally towards him. Obviously, it was the Spirit of Bones, holding a white bone blade and launching a large-scale slashing attack towards the surrounding. This skill was not mentioned in the strategy Qinfeng had read. Maybe it wasn't even a skill. It was just a normal attack. The reason was that the boss couldn't see where Qinfeng was at all, so it could only adopt the way with the largest attack range. Even if this way had the lowest damage, as long as it could hit the target player. But unfortunately, the damage absorbing shields on Qinfeng were enough for him to resist this single attack method. The boss launched horizontal slashing attacks again and again, but Qinfeng didn't even bother to dodge and didn't receive any damage. At the same time, one after another, shadow blades burst out from his hands. 7 seconds later, the 3 shadow clones disappeared. The damage Qinfeng dealt was still immune. It wasn't until more than 10 seconds later that the damage numbers appeared again. Qinfeng directly released Shadow of Slaughter again, followed by Mercy Kill and Scarlet Blade. 535. Zaozhen Weakness Attack. 548. Zaozhen Weakness Attack. 522. Zaozhen Weakness Attack. 533. Zaozhen Weakness Attack. 4 bright red damage numbers popped up. Immediately after that, the Spirit of Bones entered the invincible health lock state again. The difference was that, at this time, the boss went berserk. On the ground of the entire cold and dark space, countless white bone blades began to stab out crazily, forming an ocean of bone spikes. The damage range was large and the damage frequency was high. Even skills like damage absorbing shields had little effect. The more than 10 layers of Black Light Shield were shattered in less than 2 seconds. The only flaw of this berserk skill was that the single damage was relatively low, according to the normal way of fighting. When the boss entered the berserk stage, players usually relied on continuous recovery abilities to endure this berserk skill. Even Qinfeng originally planned to endure it by relying on shields and life absorption. But now, the Shadow Arc took effect. At this stage, there will still be many small monsters around. Sure enough, they all launched area of effect attacks, one by one. The skeletal monsters revived and got up, covering the whole field together with the boss's berserk skill. At this time, Qinfeng could be said to be in the middle of a hail of bullets. No matter how he tried to dodge, it was impossible to avoid the attacks. The damage-absorbing shields on his body were quickly broken. 214, 274, 198, 425 weakness attack. The damage wasn't high, but the advantage was the high frequency. At the moment when the damage-absorbing shields were all broken, all these damages landed on Qinfeng's shield, since he had just used Instant Shadow Slash and Scarlet Blade. The shield bar on his body had already been filled up. Now the composition of his health bar was 90,000 health points, 1,000 shield points, in the godforsaken game, unless otherwise specified. Players could obtain a maximum shield value equivalent to 10 times their health points. Now, Qinfeng's shield value was 10 times his health points, with a full value of 190, 400, and when he continued to take damage, a part of the shield bar turned into a gray area, which was the effect of the Shadow Arc. In just an instant, Heinfeng received nearly 5,000 damage. The composition of his health bar became 19,000 health points, so 185. 1,000 shield points, 5. 1,000 gray shield points. The gray shield points meant that these shields hadn't been actually deducted yet. Merge into the darkness. Qinfeng released the invisibility skill to offset the effect of the invisibility removal that would occur 1 second later. Immediately after that, he released the already cooled down instant Shadow Slash, killed more than 10 skeletal monsters, and at the same time, the generated shield value offset his gray shield bar. The composition of his health bar changed back to 90,000 health points plus 190. Goes in shield points. Night Ring Blade. A large area blade light spread, and a series of damage numbers appeared around again. There's no immune word. That means the boss has removed its invincible state. Die. Qinfeng listened to the position of the boss, raised his hand, and launched a Scarlet Blade. 748. Wills and Weakness attack. You have killed the Spirit of Bones, combination Emerald level. You have obtained 128,000 experience points. Congratulations. You have obtained 60 evolution points. Mia. You have obtained 39 8 years of lifespan tradable. During the process, when Qinfeng launched the final blow, he was still hit by the raging bone spikes several times, and gray shield bars appeared. But Qinfeng ended the boss with the Scarlet Blade, and the life absorption effect of the ultimate skill directly offset these gray shield bars. And what this brought to Qinfeng was, congratulations. You have perfectly, without taking damage, extremely fast completed the Skull Ruins challenge. Bam. You will obtain the perfect level challenge reward. The appearance of this system prompt surprised Qinfeng a bit. In the previous life, several people who obtained the Flying Mount, Bone Sword Wyvern, only got ordinary rewards. He had never heard of any perfect level challenge rewards before, right? The conditions for the perfect reward are to clear the level without taking damage and to clear it extremely fast, not to mention the extremely fast part. Even in the later stage, when others face bosses of higher levels, how could they burst out and kill the bosses in an instant, like me? As for without taking damage, in the final Berserk stage of the Ba, it was impossible to not take damage at all. Only because of the effect of the Shadow Arc, although I was attacked. The damage was offset before it took effect, which was equivalent to not taking damage. Whether it was health points or shield, as long as damage was taken. It couldn't be considered without taking damage, but Qinfeng's Shadow Arc made him achieve the condition of without taking damage as if he were cheating. When Qinfeng completed the challenge, a faint white light appeared in front of him. The light gradually became brighter and illuminated the surrounding environment. Qinfeng narrowed his eyes a little and then saw that this was actually a spherical room made of bones. The Emerald level boss, Spirit of Bones, was a combination formed by countless bones. There were dozens of arms and dozens of legs, holding dozens of bone blades in its hands. On the ground, there were the corpses of skeletal monsters everywhere. Qinfeng waited for several minutes, and after confirming that the boss didn't move, he stepped forward and used the greed hand on the boss. Congratulations. You have obtained 60 evolution points. 5. You have obtained 39 8 years of lifespan tradable. 5. You have obtained the Bonethorn Diamond level. A diamond level assassin weapon dropped. Qinfeng was a bit surprised. He directly checked it. Bonethorn Diamond, assassin type weapon. Physical attack power plus 255. Elemental attack power plus 255. Strength plus 40. Spirit plus 40. Armor penetration plus 30%. Ignoring elemental resistance plus 30%. Equipment requirement. Level 20. Unique special effect. When hitting the target, it will additionally break 30% of the target's physical defense and all elemental resistance. Note: negative status effects on bosses above the diamond level will have reduced effectiveness. It was an armor-piercing blade. Qinfeng thought for a while and took down the pale bone blade. The Emerald level Black Flame's gift leather armor on his body also had an armor-piercing effect, but after all, it was only at the Emerald level, once facing bosses above the Emerald level. The armor-piercing effect from the Black Flame's gift would be greatly reduced. This was also the reason why Qinfeng changed the curse effect of the Ancient God's Stone Tablet from armor penetration to cooldown reduction. If it was against bosses above the Emerald level, then the greatly reduced armor-piercing effect was almost equivalent to nothing. If it was against Emerald level or weaker bosses, Qinfeng could kill them in an instant anyway. So it didn't matter whether there was an armor-piercing effect or not. But the Bonethorn was different. The armor penetration and ignoring elemental resistance of the basic attributes wouldn't have their effects reduced just because the boss's rank was too high. Because these were attributes that took effect on oneself, only the special effect would have its effectiveness reduced due to the boss's rank. Moreover, this was a weapon that could exert higher attributes in Qinfeng's hands. The legendary level Dual Blade Mastery skill will increase the basic attributes of each of my weapons by 25%. That means the 30% armor penetration attribute of this Bonethorn is equivalent to 5%. Adding the 30% additional armor breaking special effect, the total armor piercing effect is 5%. Armor piercing effects from different sources could be directly stacked with a maximum effectiveness of 100% in the middle and late stages of the godforsaken game. Physical type professions would stack armor penetration and spell type professions would stack ignoring elemental resistance, and basically, they had to stack them up to 100%. Otherwise, when dealing with high-level bosses, it would be like scratching an itch. Of course, the percentage armor piercing and ignoring elemental resistance attributes on equipment were very rare. They belong to the most expensive type of equipment in the middle and late stages. Next, open the treasure chest. Let's see what the perfect level challenge reward will give. Qinfeng stepped on the corpse of the Spirit of Bones and came to its head, where he saw a treasure chest emerging from the void. The treasure chest was dazzling, and it was impossible to tell what grade it was. Qinfeng, as usual, put on the believer's pendant and summoned the pious believers to explore the way. It turned out that this treasure chest had no traps. You have obtained the Mount Bell epic level. You have obtained the Bone Rune. The Bone Sword Wyvern that Qinfeng knew about was just an emerald level mount, but the Mount Bell he obtained, surprisingly, it was an epic level one. Qinfeng checked his backpack and looked at the Mount Bell in the backpack that was emitting the golden light of the epic level. Mount Bell Bone Sword Wyvern, King of the Predators, Osario. After using it, summon King of the Predators, Osirio Elfwang, which can help in battles and can also be ridden. Required level, 20 soulbound, non-tradable. Epic. 10,000 years ago, the city of Squim was destroyed by a group of predators from the sky, and millions of humans died, and the perpetrators had no remorse. It was also a Bone Sword Wyvern, but this was the king of the Bone Sword Wyvern group, the king of the predators. Moreover, mounts of the epic level were unique, had their own unique names, and retained a certain amount of wisdom. That meant that even if others completed the perfect challenge achievement again, they couldn't obtain the same Mount Bell. Osirio. Qinfeng had never heard of this name in his previous life. After all, in the previous life, no one could complete the perfect challenge of the Spirit of Bones. Qinfeng put away the Mount Bell first, then he checked the Bone Rune. Bone Rune, the tomb rune of the Bone God. Collect 3 of them to enter the tomb ruins of the Bone God. The Bone God, like the ancient god of calamity, was one of the fallen ancient gods. Seeing this Bone Rune, Qinfeng suddenly understood something. In his previous life, it was precisely because he obtained 3 judgment runes and opened the tomb runes of the Judgment Ancient God that he was finally able to obtain the eyeball of the Judgment Ancient God. Of course, it wasn't a smooth journey. He had spent several years just searching for the location of the Judgment Ancient God's ruins in that tomb ruins. He had died dozens of times and finally reached the Core Faith Temple. However, it's not that as long as you enter the tomb ruins of the ancient god, you can obtain the inheritance of authority. I heard that in the previous life. There were also others who entered the tomb ruins of other ancient gods. Although their gains were not small, they didn't obtain anything related to authority either. Qinfeng's obtaining of the authority of the ancient god was a message with a server-wide prompt. Otherwise, outsiders would never have known about it. So if others had obtained it, it would have already spread. Anyway, this bone rune is very precious. I don't know where the other 2 can be obtained. 20 minutes later, Qinfeng left the Skull Ruins and came to the ruins outside the Skull Ruins. Since this place was a high-level area, there was still no trace of other players. Qinfeng didn't care. He took out the newly obtained epic-level Mount Bell and shook it. Immediately after that, a giant Bone Sword Wyvern, with a body length of 12 or 13 meters and a wingspan of 20 meters, condensed in front of Qinfeng. This Bone Sword Wyvern had feathers like bone swords covering its wings. In battle, these bone sword feathers could fly out or be used for close combat cutting, and they had extremely strong lethality. The size of this wyvern was much larger than the largest pterosaur in the dinosaur era on Blue Star. With such a large size, it would be impossible to fly into the sky without mastering some elemental power, because it was too heavy. However, the Bone Sword Wyvern group was born with the ability to control wind elemental power. Flying was completely instinctive for them, truly worthy of being the king of the predators. Qinfeng narrowed his eyes. Standing in front of Osirio, Qinfeng was like a tiny speck. And this top predator in the sky, although huge in size, didn't look bloated at all. Its body had a perfect streamlined arc, and under its wings were bone claws as hard as steel. It had bone fangs, and green flames flickered in its eyes. While Qinfeng was looking at it, it was also observing Qinfeng. Soon, it lowered its head towards Qinfeng, looked at Qinfeng at eye level, and let out a series of low roars. Human assassin, I once slaughtered your race. Millions of them. Truly worthy of being an epic level mount. After all, as a being with wisdom, it was normal for it to be able to speak. Hearing its low roar, Qinfeng casually replied, "What does that have to do with me? 10,000 years ago, that definitely wasn't the humans on Blue Star." He had never even heard of the city of Squim. Hearing Qinfeng's word, this top predator in the sky let out a JJJ laugh. Very good human assassin. You are the kind of existence like me. Stop talking nonsense and come here for a checkup. Qinfeng stepped forward and directly checked the attribute panel of this guy. Bone Sword Wyvern, King of the Predators, Osirio LV20. Grade, Epic Soulbound, non-tradable. Strength, 849. Constitution, 945. Agility, 1085. Spirit, 1152. Health points, 1 in 14. Zozen. Lord of the Sky, activated when used as a mount. Flight speed increased by 360%. Bone Sword Feather. Continuously release 18 Bone Sword Feathers to cause physical damage to a single enemy. Cooldown, 20 seconds. Bone Sword Rain. Release a large number of Bone Sword Feathers to cause physical damage to a large number of enemies. Cooldown, 20 seconds. Perpetual Cyclone. Release a perpetual cyclone to continuously cause wind elemental damage to a large number of enemies. Cooldown, 600 seconds. Bone covered shield. Release bone sword feathers to form a shield equivalent to 100% of health points. Cooldown, 60 seconds. King of the Predators. Summon 12 bone sword wyverns emerald level. Cooldown, 600 seconds. When Qinfeng finished reading its attributes, he was a bit surprised. Good guy. This perpetual cyclone. Why isn't it like a tornado destroying a parking lot? Bad translation. 1. All in all, this guy was truly worthy of being an epic level mount. In terms of skills, it had both offensive and defensive capabilities, and the flight speed also had a 360% bonus, calculated according to agility. The fastest flight speed of this Osirio could already break the speed of sound, reaching about 450 meters per second, although as a mount, its combat effectiveness was definitely not as good as that of a boss of the same grade. After all, without the boss tag, there would be no corresponding attribute enhancement and mechanism correction, just taking the health points as an example. For a level 20 epic level boss, it would have at least tens of millions of health points, but this Osirio only had a little over 100,000. This was the attribute gap between it and a boss. Of course, it was just a mount after all. It was impossible to expect its combat effectiveness to be the same as that of a boss. Fortunately, even if this mount died, it could be summoned again in the godforsaken game. The interval for resummoning all Mount Bells after death was 600 seconds, which was 1 hour. Only Knights of the Knight series of professions had some skills that could reduce or shorten the post-death summoning interval of Mount Bells. The cooldown speed of other professions had no effect on Mount Bells. As for the effect of King of the Predators, it can summon 12 Emerald level Bone Sword Wyvern. This is also good. Bone Sword Wyverns can fly and can provide me with a wide range of vision. Moreover, summoning abilities sometimes had special effects. For example, the Pious Believers. These silver-level summoned creatures had been exploited by Qinfeng to the fullest, if there was no special description. The summoning abilities in this game had an unlimited duration, but there was an upper limit on the number that could exist simultaneously. For example, for the Pious Believers, each time one was summoned. The upper limit of existence was 1. For the Bone Sword Wyverns, each time 12 were summoned. The upper limit of simultaneous existence was 12. Nice. Take off. The corners of Qinfeng's mouth turned up slightly. He jumped onto Osirio's back and then casually used Merge into the darkness. The 21 level invisibility state directly covered both him and Osirio. This move directly left the epic level King of the Predators dumbfounded. I'm invisible, and it's a 21 level invisibility? I'm only level 20. Hello? What kind of god was this human assassin? Thousands of expletives rushed through the mind of the King of the Predators and finally converged into one word. 6. 1. 6. Qinfeng was a bit speechless. When he obtained this epic level Mount Bell, the mount, like some NPCs, would be instilled with the language used by Qinfeng. But Qinfeng didn't expect that this guy could even use internet buzzwords so vividly. Let's go. Qinfeng sat on the back of the Bone Sword Wyvern, feeling the cold touch of the bones, sitting on it. He was just a little bit bigger than its eyeballs. Immediately after that, it spread its pale white wings that were over 20 meters long and took off resolutely under the 21 level invisibility state. You know, the wingspan of many medium-sized airliners on Blue Star was only about 30-some meters. It was no exaggeration to say that the size of this epic level mount was already equivalent to half an airplane. However, the acceleration of this mount was countless times faster than that of an airplane. In just a dozen seconds, it directly accelerated to the speed of sound. Qinfeng grasped some thin bone feathers on its neck with one hand. His short hair was blown loudly by the wind, and he felt as if he was about to be blown away. This speed, awesome. Truly worthy of being a top predator that controlled wind elemental power. After flying into the sky, all the scenes on the ground began to shrink, but it was still impossible to see the ruins of Modu City hundreds of kilometers away. In the dim clouds, the invisible Osirio carried Qinfeng and flew towards the ruins of Modu City at a speed faster than the speed of sound. Along the way, all kinds of scorched earth, ruins, dried up riverbeds, black forests burning with black fire. Various regional scenes came into Qinfeng's sight. Within 500 kilometers of the city ruin, there wouldn't be any particularly dangerous areas. But beyond 500 kilometers, it was basically starting from berserk areas. Those were leveling areas for players above level 25. After reaching level 25, players who wanted to kill monsters and level up basically spent most of their time in berserk areas, with 100 times the lifespan flow rate. And this was equivalent to setting a threshold for many players. If their strength wasn't strong enough, they didn't even have the qualification to level up. Qinfeng sat on the mount. He opened the friend channel and checked the private messages. Up to now, the official had already found several platinum level bosses for him. But for Qinfeng, these platinum level bosses weren't the most urgent thing. Now that I have a flying mount, I still need to go back to the novice town in Zhanghai City first and get the ancient god's stone tablet. Qinfeng flew all the way towards the ruins of Modu City. The route was Ruins of Modu City. Ruins of Zhanghai City, initial town. It cost 985 days of lifespan to travel from the ruins of Modu City to the ruins of Zhanghai City. To go back to the initial town from the ruins of Zhanghai City, since it was the second time going back, the consumption was doubled compared to the first time, reaching 1 dozen days of lifespan. The one-way ticket alone cost 4 years of lifespan. Even though Qin Feng now had over 2,000 years of lifespan, he still felt a bit pained, let alone other people. Just a few minutes later, Qin Feng had already seen a vast city ruin with a radius of 200 or 300 kilometers appearing on the ground ahead. That was the ruins of Modu City. When I came, it took me 20 minutes, but it only took a few minutes to return. The acquisition of the flying mount enabled Qin Feng to reach the highest speed that could be achieved at his current level in terms of travel speed. Looking down from the sky, the center of the ruins of Modu City was already crowded with people. Currently, most players were still staying in the novice towns. Among them, some players were not good at fighting. For example, most of the elderly only returned to reality after reaching level 3, so those who had reached level 10 and came to the city ruins basically had a certain combat ability or were brought up by others. The proportion of these players among the total players was less than 1/10. Even so, the total number of players in the ruins of Modu City now was already 2 or 3 million. Looking down from the sky, one could see the dense players in the ruins, moving around everywhere. Just like piles of ants, Qin Feng rode Osirio to the center of the ruins of Modu City. When approaching the ground, he jumped down and put away the huge creature under him. The official player guards around and some resurrected players all felt as if there was a gust of wind blowing around, but they didn't see anything. Han Feng entered the area under the central statue and came to the teleportation array. Teleport. After 2 consecutive teleports, he directly arrived at the Lucky Town mentioned by An Yu. Lucky Town. This was a relatively backward town within the scope of Zhanghai City. There were now more than 700 people in the town, most of whom were elderly people and some players who entered the game relatively late. After experiencing the initial panic and drastic changes, now many elderly people were also gathering their courage and trying to hunt some monsters to earn lifespan. In comparison, the elderly people's desire for lifespan far exceeded that of the young people. After all, they saw the hope that they could keep living. Many elderly people in Lucky Town were like this. However, obviously, it wasn't lucky to descend on this town. Suddenly, 5 flying monsters appeared in the sky, either in groups or acting separately, hunting players everywhere. The combat power of these 5 gold-level monsters wasn't particularly strong. At this stage, not to mention top teams like Wang Meng's, even some above-average teams could deal with gold-level bosses. But the key was that the players in this town were too weak, even though the official quickly dispatched some high-level teams that were still staying in the town to come over. They could suppress the monsters, but those monsters would just fly away when they couldn't win. The official strong players had no way to deal with them at all. So, of the 700 or so players in this town, some went offline, some teleported to other towns, and some were trapped in the safe area. Some players had originally teleported here from other towns, but they didn't expect to encounter this situation. Now, if they wanted to teleport away, they had to spend lifespan. Naturally, no one was willing to do so. Of course, the key point was that the Zhanghai City official had issued an announcement saying that Shadow would take time to come and help them solve the monsters here. This was why many people stayed. However, several hours have passed. Where is the promised Shadow? Truly worthy of being a big shot. So busy. It's just a matter of coming over and killing a few bosses in seconds. Yet it's been delayed for so long. Exactly. With such strong strength, shouldn't he help his compatriots more? I don't know how long we have to wait. I'm still waiting for my son to take me out to earn lifespan. What a waste of our time. Some old ladies and middle-aged women gathered together and gossiped, all looking a bit impatient when Qin Feng teleported here. He didn't cancel his invisibility state. He only planned to ride Osirio to kill the 5 gold-level bosses in the sky and then take away the Ancient God's stone tablet. But he never expected. When he came to this town in an invisible state, there were actually people complaining that he was slow. How interesting. Qin Feng sneered. It seemed as if he was obliged to clear the monsters for these people. If he hadn't obtained the flying mount first, he wouldn't have been able to kill those 5 flying bosses all at once. Even so, there were people complaining that he was slow and wasting their time. When Qin Feng arrived, he heard that quite a number of people in the town were talking about him. At the same time, there were also many official personnel maintaining order. An official girl walked past Qin Feng. Her codename was Bionic Electronic Little Fox. Judging from her attire, she was a mage and was quite good looking. When she came to the group of middle-aged and elderly women who were gossiping, she immediately tried to persuade them. Bionic Electronic Little Fox. Everyone, please calm down. He surely has his own affairs. Since he said he would come, he will definitely come if you can't wait. You can log off and have a rest first. 1. The girl spoke softly, but those aunties and old ladies didn't bother to pay attention to her at all. However, a slightly plump and beautiful woman in a black priest robe beside them couldn't stand it anymore. Why are you being so polite to them? All of you old hags, just shut up. The official has spent time and manpower to bring you to level 3. Isn't that enough? Do they still have to take care of your growth? How shameless. This slightly plump and beautiful priestess had a rather fierce personality and didn't give the other side any face at all. Suddenly, a middle-aged curly-haired rich woman got angry. She took a glance at her and said, Isn't it just reaching level 3? It's as if we couldn't reach level 3 without your help. An old woman also said unkindly. Exactly. The officials sent you to deal with the monsters, but you couldn't handle them. What are you good for? An old man holding a staff pointed at the beautiful priestess and criticized. What kind of code names do young people choose nowadays, alas? The moral values of society are declining. Really declining. No more. Just gonna. None of your business. Old fart. Shadow is the #1 in the world. It's already good that he's willing to take time to come and kill monsters for you. If I had a friend like that, Big Shot, I would just tell him not to come. A bunch of ungrateful people. The middle-aged curly-haired rich woman was shaking with anger. She pointed at her and said, "Do you really think we care? Huh. Whether he comes or not. I just don't have free teleportation now. Otherwise, I would have left long ago. Do you really think we can only wait for him? No more. Just gonna." Then what are you waiting for here? Why don't you just log off, eat and drink, and wait until 12 o'clock to teleport away? Curly-haired rich woman. Isn't it because I want to save some time and go out to kill monsters earlier? No more. Just gonna... Your time is time. But the Big Shot's time isn't time. You mean to save your time but waste the Big Shot's time? How ridiculous. The group of people was in a noisy mess. In the town, people had indeed been waiting for a long time. However, these players had already reached level 3 and could log off. The only reason they were waiting here was for one purpose. That was, after Shadow came to kill the bosses, they could go out to look for monsters and earn lifespan as soon as possible. In the novice town, monsters would respawn after being killed, but the respawn speed was extremely slow. This led to the fact that many monsters that respawned had to be fought over. Some smart players realized that during this period when players were trapped in the safe area, quite a number of monsters must have respawned outside after Shadow killed the flying bosses. They could rush out first and grab more monsters. Originally, Qinfeng just wanted to come, kill the bosses, take the stone tablet and leave. But after hearing these people's comments, it was impossible for him to be so straightforward. As the saying goes, take a step back and you'll get a myocardial infarction. How could he not teach these shameless old hags a lesson? Of course, Qinfeng wouldn't waste too much time on these unimportant guys either. Mark as hostile. Qinfeng marked all the players in the town who had criticized him as hostile. The light red names meant that they were marked as hostile by himself. If the names were dark red, it meant that the other party had killing value. Qinfeng took a quick look. There were names like Fortune and Peace 1025, Happy Ying Ying. The stage of life is more wonderful in old age. Among the crowd, a total of 15 people who had spoken rudely all had light red codenames in Qinfeng's eyes. Then, Qinfeng quietly went to the woods outside the town. He raised his hand and summoned Osirio to his side. After it appeared, it yawned first, then its green eyes took a glance in the direction of the town. Obviously, it also heard the quarrel in the town and immediately laughed. These are humans. Fuck, you're sick. Release your minions. 4. Qinfeng gave an order to Osirio. Oh! Osirio nodded and then raised its bone feathers and released the summoning skill of the King of the Predators. In the next moment, a total of 12 bone sword wyverns that were a bit smaller than it emerged from the surrounding space. These bone sword wyverns were all of the emerald level. Each of them had a wingspan of over 10 meters when their wings were spread out. They had fierce bone claws, and their eyes were also a faint green. It's just that they didn't have as many skills as Osirio, and their skills weren't as powerful. At this time, Qinfeng was a bit speechless. This epic level mount was completely different in style from the epic level mount he had in his previous life. The epic level mount in his previous life was honest and kind, but this one seemed to have something wrong with its brain, or had eaten too much of something. 1. Keep an eye on those hostile targets. If they go out, kill them. If they want to teleport to other town, stop them and don't let them enter the teleportation room. Qinfeng casually gave an order, directly deciding the fate of those 15 hostile players. There was no other way. If it weren't for the 5 flying bosses that were related to the ancient god's stone tablet, Qinfeng really wouldn't have bothered to come and kill them. But even if he was going to kill them, he wouldn't let those 15 disgusting people get any benefits. Immediately after that, a total of 12 bone sword wyverns that were bigger and fiercer than the 5 flying bosses in the sky flew out of the woods. 2 of the bone sword wyverns flew directly to the sky above the town and then landed toward the teleportation array room in the center of the town. They directly blocked the entrance to the basement where the teleportation array was located. As long as those 15 hostile targets wanted to approach, these 2 bone sword wyverns could directly stop them. Although people couldn't be hurt in the safe area, both players and summons had collision volume. The bone sword wyverns could completely rely on their bodies to block those 15 people and prevent them from entering the teleportation gate. The other 10 bone sword wyverns flew around the town and circled at a low altitude. They were always ready to attack. In this way, those 15 hostile targets couldn't even think about going out to earn lifespan. Dare to go out? They would be killed directly. Want to go to other town? Sorry. You can't even get close to the teleportation gate. Anyway, the summons had an unlimited duration and didn't know fatigue. As long as Qinfeng didn't need to use these bone sword wyverns in other places, they could keep on guarding here. And this sudden scene directly caused a series of screams to break out in Lucky Town. No one expected that why monsters could land outside the teleportation gate in the center of the town. Wasn't this a safe area? Everyone's minds went blank. At the same time, People looked up expectantly and saw a shocking scene that shocked everyone. They saw that the flying monster bosses that were originally circling in the sky, with their grotesque and distorted shapes, were cut into two halves by some invisible force. Their health bars on top of their heads disappeared instantly and they died on the spot. What's going on? Hundreds of people in the town were all dumbfounded, and quite a number of players were so scared by the Bonesword Wyverns that they logged off on the spot. Boom, boom. In the sky, the corpses of the distorted flying bosses that had been cut in half crashed down with a loud noise, landing in piles among the ruins of the buildings in the town's safe area. Quite a number of players were even directly hit by the chunks of corpses. Fortunately, it was the safe area. Even if they were hit or attacked, they wouldn't take any damage. However, these players were all middle-aged or elderly people. After being hit, they were so frightened that they were convulsing. Some people could still crawl out from under the chunks of corpses. Some could only stretch out an arm outside, waving it feebly to ask for help, while people were screaming and in a state of panic. In the sky, a pale white figure with a width of over 20 meters blocked part of the sky and glided down towards the town. With its streamlined body and a pair of bone feather wings spread out, it gave people an unimaginable mental impact. Not only the middle-aged and elderly players present, even the official players who had come to support this town were all stunned. How handsome it is. Quite a number of people exclaimed and shouted out directly. It was none other than Acirio, the king of the Bonesword Wyverns. Its pair of pupils glowing with a faint green light looked down on the town from above, carrying Qinfeng. It landed on the town square like a fighter jet. The whirlwind it brought along forced many players around to retreat more than 10 or 20 meters. Then, it folded its wings. Its pair of bone claws, as hard as pale white steel, grasped the ground. Only then, the players who had managed to steady themselves gradually noticed that there was actually a figure on this huge creature. Wow. It's Shadow. It's really Shadow. Shadow made a move. Is this the Big Shot's mount? So handsome. Oh my god. I'm so excited. Didn't anyone notice that he killed those 5 bosses in an instant by himself? I heard that the Big Shot can kill platinum level bosses in an instant, so it's quite reasonable for him to kill a few gold level small bosses in an instant, right? Qinfeng landed on the ground riding Acirio and casually stuffed the ancient god's stone tablet he had just caught in the sky into his storage backpack. The veil of darkness covered his face, the bone thorn and the tide-playing blade were hung on his waist. All his equipment at a glance was high-end stuff. In comparison, even the experts, sent by the official among other players, seemed like newbies and clearly were not on the same level as Qinfeng. As he walked, with every step he took, the hearts of the players around skipped a beat. This made Qinfeng a bit speechless. If it weren't for Acirio, even if he showed up, he wouldn't be able to create such a shocking effect. Apparently, humans were really visual creatures. He put away the ancient god's stone tablet and first came to several official personnel. One of them was that little beautiful mage, bionic electronic little fox. Qinfeng said, "The Bonesword Wyverns around here were summoned by me. They can protect the town. You can notify everyone not to worry." Hearing this, the little face of the bionic electronic little fox blushed red, and she nodded excitedly. Immediately after that, Qinfeng turned around and walked toward the corpses of the bosses that had fallen in the town. These all meant evolution points and platinum level equipment. Naturally, Qinfeng wouldn't let them go, looking at his handsome back as he turned around. Even the 2 self-conceited young experts from the official showed an adoring look. Not to mention some girls in the crowd. Their eyes all turned into hearts one by one. After the initial shock, the players in the town finally came to their senses one by one. The bosses in the sky had been dealt with by Shadow. Although this scene gave the middle-aged and elderly players a bit of a shock, most of them didn't realize what it meant. Some of them even thought that Shadow was just at a high level. As long as they leveled up, they would be able to become as strong as Shadow sooner or later. The prerequisite was to obtain enough lifespan first to ensure their survival. So, after confirming that the bosses in the sky had been killed, the middle-aged and elderly players all became active in their thought immediately. Some players formed teams and ran out of the town. In the past few hours, people had been blocked in the town. There must have been quite a number of monsters that had respawned outside, right? Take advantage of this moment to grab lifespan. Originally, some people were still afraid of the Bonesword Wyverns hovering outside, but hadn't Shadow said it? These were summoned by Shadow to protect them. No more. Just gonna... Hey, you guys, stop right there. Didn't you just curse at Shadow? Now that Shadow has killed the bosses, you want to enjoy the benefits. Have you no shame? 1. This girl was about 72 meters tall and wasn't as thin as ordinary girls. Facing those old guys, she was full of momentum. However, her face was quite pretty and had a bit of a baby face look, which made her momentum seem a bit weaker. The middle-aged curly-haired rich woman named Happy Ying Ying, get lost. Let go! Who cursed at Shadow. Which of your ears heard that? The old man beside her, holding a staff, the stage of life is more wonderful in old age, glared with a fierce look on his face. Don't talk nonsense. Be careful, I sue you for defamation. Compared with the girl, these middle-aged and elderly players were really fierce-looking. It was as if they were rushing to the supermarket to grab discounted goods. Whoever dared to stop them would be their sworn enemy. The girl was so aggrieved when being scolded like this, right? There was no evidence? How irritating. Why doesn't this game have a video and audio recording function? Not only could it record the evidence of some people's misdeeds, but also could record the Big Shot's handsome appearance when showing up. What this girl didn't know was that this function really existed. Just within the territory of Daxia, there were several God's Power Towers where the God-given book, Light and Shadow Crystal, was sold. One could consume lifespan to create light and shadow crystals that could record pictures and sounds in the game. The difference from traditional video cameras and mobile phones was that the light and shadow crystals were disposable. Although it didn't cost much lifespan to create a light and shadow crystal, it was still a bit less convenient to use than high-tech products. Of course, these several God's Power Towers were all high-level God's Power Towers. Not only was the challenge difficulty extremely high, but there were also reputation restrictions. Not everyone was qualified to challenge them. Just when the beautiful priestess was feeling annoyed, suddenly, a series of screams came from outside the town. Ah! Don't kill me. Didn't they say these monsters were here to protect us? The beautiful priestess looked up and was dumbfounded by the scene she saw. The several middle-aged and elderly players who had just been so stubborn had just run out of the town when they were killed by the bone spurs shot down by the bone sword wyverns, hovering in the sky. Happy Ying Ying. The stage of life is more wonderful in old age, and several other middle-aged and elderly players with foul mouths instantly turned into white light and were resurrected on the square. This scene shocked not only the killed parties, but also the other players beside them. What was going on here?